Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Creators and Coffee. I'm your host, Erica Sietsma with Autofluencer. And joining me today is Monique Sar of Vitesse Agency. And Vitesse is really cool because you guys are both a digital agency, correct? Working with automotive manufacturers, as well as an agent representing content creators, influencers, racers, drivers, right? So you have both sides of it.
Yeah, that's right. I'm super excited about this. De Vitesse actually means of speed in French. And so, I think it's so on brand and really love working with the automotive community.
Oh, that's awesome. And at some other point, we'll have to talk about your background in automotive because it's a fun journey. But let's talk about tips that you have for brands on why to start working with content creators or, sponsoring drivers or influencers and how that can help them. You've been doing this for many years now. You worked with top level athletes, Olympians, and now really focusing in on automotive. So I think your experience is really powerful because you also have that analytical metrics driven brain from your agency side. So I love hearing that, your side of it because we do get the question when we meet with brands of like, I don't know if it really makes a difference. I can't tell. Like, I don't know if it's that important or it's a fad. So would love to hear from you, Monique, on what are your top tips to brands on why to work with creators?
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, I completely agree. I'm a bit of a data junkie. And so taking a data driven approach to this makes it a lot easier. So, as we know, many brands are a little bit nervous about this because ROI is this very elusive thing in
Yeah.
the influence marketing space. And how do we measure things? And so, we definitely have our own philosophy and system of how we track our data points to make sure that when we're working with our brands, we have something to go back to them with where we can
Mhm.
actually measure to see if this is actually working. I have a couple of different tips and reasons why brands definitely have to collaborate with influencers, especially going into this day and age. Number one is that you get a targeted audience reach, right? So you're working with these creators that already have people that are your
Mhm.
ideal customers. Number two, it establishes credibility and authority. So if you're working with a creator that already has a really great track record, maybe you're just focused on a specific category or a specific car part, they can be knowledgeable and have that technical experience to speak to the technical people at the shop as well as speak to the DIY at home or in their own garages.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely really important there.
And really,
And
one
obviously,
quick, I
yeah,
just want to
yeah.
touch on both of those items you just said, Monique, because if we go back to number one and these targeted audiences, as a brand, if you think about it, usually a brand can only tell one message really well and connect with one main audience. Even for large brands, this is somewhat where the creator economy grew out of. Even if you have a huge marketing department, it is near impossible to be able to authentically communicate with multiple different target audiences at once. You'd have to be like a marketing wizard and have such a huge team. But then to move into that number two, a huge team that has credibility, right? Which a lot of times you can't afford to bring on staff that level of marketing team member that can tell that story with the same authority and credibility that someone that's already doing it and has been doing it themselves for years. So I think that's really important for brands to think of. It is not a slight on the brand that, like, oh, well, you're just not good at it. So let these people help. It's not that at all. No brand can do it. Even the largest brands in the world, that's why they're working with so many creators, is because they finally said, man, this is really hard, you know, to truly dedicate to more than one main audience. And let's leverage these people that already have these genuine and authentic relationships with these different demographics and market segments to tell that message.
Oh, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head because it definitely becomes a bandwidth issue. And especially if you're
Yeah.
trying to reach into different categories, how do you do that without bringing those people in house? And that can obviously be a lot more expensive. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. That actually leads me into speaking about the next one, which is actually trust and loyalty. You mentioned authenticity a lot in that word.
Mhm.
And I think that's so important because people don't like being sold to, especially in
Right.
the automotive scene. People do not want to be sold to. And so when you're collaborating with a content creator or an influencer, you can basically tap into that trust and loyalty that they've already built with their audience and their fans. And so when they're promoting your product, it doesn't look like an advertisement and
Yeah.
it doesn't look too salesy, and so that's a really great point as well.
Yeah.
And so, as as we kind of like move into working more with them and why you should, definitely it's more around like having higher conversion rates because again, people don't like being sold to, but when they're being shown something, and especially because these influencers have already created a relationship with their audience, they know their audience so well. They know what kind of content's going to hit because they've already nurtured that
Right.
relationship. So when
Right.
they're creating their own content, it can definitely resonate a little bit more to actually move them to purchasing and buying decisions.
Yes.
So that results into those higher conversion rates as well. So, and then last but not
Yeah.
least, unless you had something else to add to that, it
No,
would
yeah, you
be
go.
I know it's like kind of like going through this whole journey of like collaborating with the influencers, but last but not least, it's getting that valuable insights and feedback. So
Mm.
this is really important because let's say, for example, if it is a bandwidth thing and you don't have like an in-house media team to like be on the pulse of what's going on and what are the trends in social media, you can work with these content creators because they're obviously doing this full time, or maybe they're not doing it full time, but they're consuming enough content as well as
Mhm.
posting enough content to know what's going to really resonate. And they'll be able to provide you with some valuable insights and feedback on what might do better. So maybe it's more of the educational stuff, or maybe it's the technical stuff, or maybe it is solely just lifestyle DIY install video, like a how to step by step. And some people love that. And some of those styles really work. But as you're working with a content creator, I think that the biggest reason is obviously the aforementioned things that we had talked about, but certainly getting access to different channels that you wouldn't
Mhm.
already have. So
Yeah. I'm going to throw a curveball at you really quick. I want to just get a little snippet from you on this. And this is something where I've really started changing my tune over the last year, the more I've learned. I'd love for you to talk about where you see the power in TikTok, because I know you work with some big TikTok creators, and I've kind of heard from somebody like, oh, well, we only like YouTube because YouTube content lasts forever. And I think there's a bit of a misconception that TikTokers are young. So maybe just share a little bit of how you view TikTok and the power of TikTok.
yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought this up because I definitely agree that, YouTube is definitely forever. It's going to be there. And I know some people are a little bit worried about TikTok because it's so transient, right? But people think it just hits for the first 48 hours and then
Yeah.
it's like gone with the wind.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely part of your overall long-term strategy. And so being a marketer firsthand, and having that working with a lot of like clients in that realm with my agency, it's really important to factor TikTok into your long-term strategy. Even though the community and the audience here might be younger, these are also the trendsetters. And sometimes the older generation that might be hanging out more on Facebook or some other platforms, they will actually look to the younger generation to
Hmm.
see what the hottest trends are. And more importantly, as this community ages and grows over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, these are going to be your customers. So it's more important than ever to actually establish your foothold on these platforms like TikTok. So that way, you are putting the content out, you're building your and establishing your community. So that way, over time, over that long term strategy, next 5 to 10 years, these are the people that are going to be buying your products.
Yeah. I love that. And I was actually doing some research on TikTok recently and saw that 55% of TikTok users in the United States are over the age of 24, with
Yeah.
17%, well, 23% are 24 to 35 or something like that, or 25 to 34. And then, 35 to 44 is another almost 18%. These are big buying audiences, right? Like these are audiences, and with that 25 to 34, the 35 to 44, that spending power of those two demographics is very, very high right now. And we're also seeing time on site for TikTok is double that of Instagram. And so what's interesting is because there's not enough automotive content, they will actually feed up older content to keep the person because their algorithm is so good, right? And goes after what you're watching. So if you're watching videos on redoing a classic Mustang, it's going to keep feeding those, and it will go back in time and pull it like what YouTube does. And I think that's something people don't realize that TikTok is doing. So to your point about the Gone with the Wind in 48 hours, well, there may be an aspect of that. It's nowhere near as much as Instagram, and they actually have a much better algorithm to kind of feed the beast,
Yes.
if you
100%.
will, and get that attention. And then last thing being, we are seeing that it is the new generation's how to place, right? How to do this, how to do that, because it's quicker and it's more bite sized than YouTube, where people are doing like 35-minute videos, right? And people are like, oh my God. just can you just get to it?
People want it now.
Yeah, like 3, 4 minutes,
Exactly.
right? You can go up to what, 10 minutes on TikTok? I mean, now it's gotten much longer.
Expanded on that too, just because like it is definitely a slower burn. And so as you're putting out content on TikTok, also people too are using it just like Google, right?
Yeah.
They're using it to
Yes.
search for things, right? And
Yes.
so that's important.
Yeah, I think that's something people don't realize because on Facebook and Instagram, they were never able to get that going and they tried and tried and tried. So I think for, I would say my generation and above, we still think of Google and YouTube, you would go to search, but the generations below, and I'm not scared to say I'm 44, so I'm on top of that generation. And just slightly below me, which there's a huge population in my age range that are on TikTok. It's at 18% of their users are in my generation, and but below, it is actually they go and search instead of YouTube or Google. They're searching in TikTok for how tos, and that's something people aren't realizing, that it has that power of search like a YouTube, right? And I think it probably deserves a bit more attention as probably the third largest search engine in the world. I'm throwing that out there. I
Mhm.
haven't verified that, but I'm going to guess it's up there.
People are constantly searching things through TikTok, and I think people don't realize that. And so, yeah, it's definitely TikTok should totally be a part of your strategy if you're not already doing
Yeah, yeah.
it.
I've definitely become a TikTok convert. Um, Full
Mhm.
disclosure, I don't use it as much unless it's for Autofluencer. I have enough social channels. I can't ban anymore, but I have become a real believer for brands working with creators. I don't think as a brand you have to be like, oh my gosh, in your organic social, do you need to add that stream outside of a place so they can tag you? I don't think you need to be thinking right this second of having a hardcore TikTok strategy. I mean, you can. I don't think it hurts, but if you don't have the bandwidth, understood. But as you work with creators, if they have a TikTok following, definitely consider that. And just know they are going to charge for it more like YouTube than like Instagram. So I think that's something people don't
100%.
realize too, because I think they think of it as more like this. And I'm like, actually, that's more Facebook and Instagram. It has a bit of a quicker cycle. TikTok is a longer cycle because of that search function. Well, Monique, last question. I have to ask this of everybody because we are called creators in coffee. What is your favorite caffeinated beverage?
So mine is a matcha latte. I'm definitely more of a tea
I just
drinker, but I
finished.
love it.
I just finished my matcha
That's
latte.
so good.
If anybody from Starbucks were to ever watch this, can you please not put so much sugar
Right?
in it? It is so like
Exactly.
I made a real matcha latte at my house so I could control the sugar, and I was like, so it needs a little bit. Does need a little bit.
Oh, definitely, yes. Find the right
Yeah.
balance, but yeah, so
Oh,
good.
good. Well, I love it. Monique, amazing. Thank you for being on, and love the work you're doing. We'll make sure to tag and give information for everybody so they can reach out to you to learn more about what you're doing, both with helping creators connect with brands and then inversely helping brands really get their messaging out and messaging that converts. So, yes.
100%. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your
Thanks so
time.
much, Monique.